Scene 3 of It's a Wonderful Life. Final scene. Inside George's home. The lights are on, there is a fire in the fireplace, the Christmas tree is fully decorated with presents stacked around. Within the entrance hall of his home, Carter, the bank examiner, a newspaper reporter and photographer, and a sheriff are waiting in the hall for George. George comes dashing in the front door.
Mary! Well, hello, Mr. Bank Examiner.
Mr. Bally, there's a deficit.
I know, $8,000.
George, I've got a little paper right here.
I'll bet it's a warrant for my arrest. Isn't it wonderful? Merry Christmas. Reporters? Where's Mary? Mary!
George runs to the kitchen. He gets no answer as he goes,
Oh, look at this wonderful old drafty house. Mary! Mary!
He comes running back to the hall.
Have you seen my wife?
Merry Christmas, Daddy!
Kids!
George starts to run up the stairs, and the old familiar knob on the banister comes off in his hand. He kisses it lovingly and puts it back, then continues up the stairs.
Pete! Kids! Janie! Tommy! I could eat you up!
At the top of the stairs, George and the kids hug.
Where's your mother?
She went looking for you with Uncle Billy.
Daddy?
Zuzu! Zuzu, my little ginger snap, how do you feel?
Fine.
And not a smit of temperature.
Not a smitch of temp.
Within the hall, Mary comes through the door, breathless and excited. The four men are watching with open mouths.
Hallelujah!
Hello? George, darling!
Mary races up the stairs where George meets her in a fierce embrace.
Mary! Mary!
George, darling, where have you been? Oh, George! George, George!
Mary, let me touch you. Oh, you're real.
Oh, George.
You have no idea what's happened to me.
You have no idea what happened.
He stops her with a kiss. She leads him excitedly down the stairs.
Well, come on, George. Come on downstairs quick. They're on their way.
All right.
Mary continues to lead George, who is carrying a couple of the kids on his back, to a position in front of the Christmas tree.
Come on in here now. Now, you stand right over here by the tree. Right there, and don't move. Don't move. I hear him now, George. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. Come in, Uncle Billy. Everybody, in here.
She runs toward the front door and flings it open. Uncle Billy, face flushed, covered with snow, and carrying a clothes basket filled with money, bursts in. He is followed by Ernie and about 20 more townspeople.
Isn't it wonderful?
Uncle Billy and the crowd come into the living room. A table stands in front of George. George picks up Zuzu to protect her from the mob. Uncle Billy dumps the basket full of money out onto the table, and the money overflows and falls all over. The rest of the crowd all greet George with greetings and smiles. Each one comes forward with money. In their pockets, in shoe boxes, in coffee pots. Money pours onto the table, pennies, dimes, quarters, dollar bills, small money, but lots of it. Mrs. Bailey and Mrs. Hatch push toward George. More people come in. The place becomes a bedlam. Shouts of gangway, gangway as a new bunch comes in and pours out its money. Mary stands next to George, watching him. George stands there, overcome and speechless as he holds Zuzu. As he sees the familiar faces, he gives them sick grins. His lips frame their names as he greets them.
Mary did it, George. Mary did it. She told a few people you were in trouble when they scattered all over collecting money. They didn't ask any questions. Just said, if George is in trouble, count on me. You never saw anything like it.
Tom comes in, digging in his purse as he comes.
What is this, George? Another run on the bank?
Charlie adds his money to the pile.
Here you are, George. Merry Christmas.
Ernie is trying to get some system into the chaos.
Line form's on the right.
Mr. Martini comes in bearing a mixing bowl overflowing with cash.
Mr. Martini, Merry Christmas. Step right up here.
Martini dumps his money on the table.
I busted the jukebox too.
Mr. Gower enters with a large glass jar jammed full of notes.
Mr. Gower!
I made the rounds of my charge accounts.
Violet Bick arrives and takes out the money George had given her for her trip to New York.
I'm not gonna go, George. I changed my mind.
Annie enters digging money out of a long black stocking.
I've been saving this money for divorce. If I ever get a husband.
Mr. Partridge, the high school principal, is the next donor.
There you are, George. I got the faculty all up out of bed.
I wouldn't have a roof over my head if it wasn't for you, George.
Ernie is reading a telegram he has just received.
Just a minute. Quiet, everybody. Quiet, quiet. Now, this is from London. Mr. Gower cables you need cash. Stop. My office instructed to advance you up to $25,000. Stop. Hee-haw and Merry Christmas. Sam Wainwright.
The crowd breaks into a cheer as Ernie drops the telegram on top of the pile of money on the table.
Mr. Martini, how about some wine?
As various members of the family bring out a punch bowl and glasses, Janie sits down at the piano and strikes a chord, and some people are still coming in and dropping their money on the table. Carter, the bank examiner, makes a donation. The sheriff sheepishly looks at George and tears his warrant in small pieces. In the midst of the scene, Harry, in naval uniform, enters, accompanied by Bert the cop.
Hello, George. How are you? Mary. Looks like I got here too late.
Mary, I got him here from the airport as quickly as I could. The fool flew all the way up here in a blizzard.
Mrs. Bailey enters.
Harry, how about your banquet in New York?
Oh, I left right in the middle of it, as soon as I got Mary's telegram.
Ernie hands Harry a glass of wine.
Good idea, Ernie. A toast. To my brother George, the richest man in town.
George, still holding Zuzu in his arms, glances down at the pile of money on the table. His eye catches something on top of the pile and he reaches down for it. It is Clarence's copy of Tom Sawyer. George opens it and finds an inscription written in it. Dear George, remember no man is a failure who has friends. Thanks for the wings. Love, Clarence.
What's that?
That's a Christmas present from a very dear friend of mine.
Look, Daddy. Teacher says every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings.
That's right.
He looks up toward the ceiling and winks.
Attaboy, Clarence.
The end.